Okay, what we're going to be doing today is talking about musical sound design. So musical sound design is not necessarily the same thing as sound design. Sound design is creating interesting effects for sound effects usually. But musical sound design uses basically the same techniques, but it does them in a musical manner. So when you're designing sounds yourself, you are creating a unique sound profile, something that is uniquely yours, modifying some kind of source that may be yours or may not be yours. So when you start, sometimes what people will do, especially professional sound designers, they will go out and they will field record. So they will record interesting sounds like maybe a buzz saw or the sound of rain or thunder, or maybe the sound of like a fishing line being pulled, like the drag or something like that. They'll record that kind of stuff and then they'll modify and edit the sounds to make something interesting. In musical sound design, you can take those same ideas, you can take samples and all sorts of different things and modify them. What we are going to do today is I'm going to show you the basics of it and show you the concepts behind how we take an idea, a sound that is one thing, and make it something entirely different. And there are a few different examples of clear musical things, such as risers, downers, whooshes, swooshes, all the different things. So we're going to start on the very, very basics. This is basics of musical sound design. So the first thing that I have here is I've pulled up a drum set. So drums is what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially create a source here. My goal for this sound right now is to create a swoosh riser or a whoosh or whatever you want to call it. It's really just a cymbal reverse. It's the most simple sound design that there is. People use these all the time. You hear them all the time, but you do need to know how to execute them. So when you're working with sound design, often it's not working with MIDI, but working with sounds. So what we're going to do, that'll work just fine. I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to play it in as MIDI. I probably don't need my click on. Okay, so I have the MIDI here. And what I'm going to do now, it's different in every DAW, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this, I'm going to render it into audio. So I'm going to go into my render settings. I'm going to keep it as complete signal path. There's nothing else in my signal path, really. That would include channel settings, all the different things. I'm going to keep my tail sizes 4 bars additional so that I have a tail on this and it's not just the MIDI range. We want to make sure it's not just this MIDI range so we get the full tail of the audio. And then we're just going to render it into audio. Look at that. So we have here, we have a cymbal swell, or we have a cymbal hit, right? And it's the same thing we just played. Wow, not very interesting. The very first thing that we can do here to make this interesting and do our first level of sound design is take this audio, and in Cubase, how you would do it is you would go to processes and you can literally just go to reverse. And suddenly, how many of y'all have heard that sound before? Probably everyone. So you just take this, and generally, if you're doing this on like a downbeat or something, you generally like line up the hit of it with like the downbeat, assuming that's your downbeat, chop off the end, and then get it to where like you only, so say we wanted it over 1 measure, you could do that. You could then actually fade it in even more if you wanted. Or fade it in even more. I typically do this for sharper ones, do an exponential curve. Makes that last growth there way, way stronger. And then some people will tell you that you don't want that last little hit there. You actually want to cut it off slightly before. I'm not convinced on the philosophy on that, to be honest with you. But if it works, it works. Perfect. So that's the first level of this, is just creating a reverse sound. Now, we can do this with all sorts of stuff. We don't have to just do this with drums. So let's say we've got our cymbal reverse. That is one thing that we can create at any point in time and use it throughout the piece of music, make it interesting, all the different things. Even more so, let's say we duplicate this and we have it elsewhere in the song, but we don't want it to be the same. One of the very simple things I would do is take this audio, transpose it down. Right, so in Cubase, I have a little transpose button here. And so now suddenly it's like I have a new sound just because it's pitch shifted, right? And I guess theoretically, if you wanted, you could like adjust it to your key and stuff, but percussion isn't really like that. So what if we did something else? So what if we reversed something else? Let's see what kind of sounds we can create on that. So what if we took a piano? So I'm going to pull out the Giant here and get my pedal. I'm not going to play anything super interesting, but I'm just going to play something. So probably let's just do like a C minor chord. Cool. What I'm going to do is render it to audio, which I actually have a hotkey now. I just have hotkeys and macros set up for that. So we've got this piano. Not that interesting. Reverse it. I also have a hotkey for that. Shocker. You've probably heard that sound too. So what if we're trying to create a really interesting riser that's more than one texture, or not a riser necessarily, but a reverse? I would maybe take this, cut this here, maybe do something like this. There's different levels to this that I can do. And then suddenly put these two together. That's pretty cool. So we've got this reverse sound design thing going on now. So let's go piano reverse. If you notice though, not accidentally, but I actually cut off some of this tail here. So if I were to show you more of the waveform, this tail goes all the way over here. So if I were to cut this, one of the other things I could do is instead of just chopping it, in Cubase, you can time stretch things. And so I can take this whole thing and put it into the space of one bar. And now suddenly, it's actually condensed and sped up in a way, which is kind of very interesting. So we've got that. We could do, let's just dig into this a little bit more. So let's say we took that same piano chord, but let's say we added some twinkles or something on top. Cool, I'm gonna put all that in as like one sound here. Make sure that I have my sustain pedal on. I just want to make sure sustain is on for this. Okay, it's totally on. And let's bring it up here. All right, and then I'm going to, same thing, render that to audio. Okay, it's gonna be slightly more interesting. I'll bring the volume up a little bit, reverse it, and what do we have? That's really cool now, right? Isn't it? Isn't that like a super cool and interesting sound? And all we did was we played like a few piano notes. So you could do something like this. Let's get rid of that one. Do something like this where it's swelling into this. And imagine if we had some big boomy hit or something after that. In fact, I'll just prove it to you. I'll prove to you why this would be super cool. So if I just pull up some big percussion thing. Actually, I'll pull up one of my favorite things. Project Sam. Oh, not this one. I need the old version, I think. So old version of Project Sam free orchestra, and it's just going to be a really low. Yep. Put that in. That's pretty cool, right? Right, we really feel the hit of that. Okay, we don't need that moving forward, but I was just trying to demonstrate that those risers, or those swells, not a riser technically, not technically a riser, those swells into that make the hits and everything way more impactful. So reverses you can do tons and tons of super cool stuff with. Next, let's talk about like pad creation, how you would theoretically create your own pad. So one of the things that you could do, a pad is essentially what? A pad is essentially some kind of, it's essentially notes, if you will, but they're usually playable. But if you're creating a sound design pad, it's probably not going to be playable unless you put it into a sampler, right? But you can create your own atmospheric pad sounds just by sort of like looping textures at weird rates and adding delays and reverbs and all sorts of stuff to them. So let's take this little piano thing. This is completely improvised, by the way. I didn't know I was going to make a pad. So this piano reverse thing that's on like a C minor. I'm going to duplicate this so that I have more room to work with here. So let's say I take this and I'm going to duplicate it again, and then let's just like crossfade some stuff there, have this here, duplicate this, crossfade some stuff here, duplicate this. In order to make it slightly more interesting, what if I time stretch this? So the concept is all I'm doing is manipulating the audio so it's slightly different and ever changing, right? So I time stretch that one slower. Let me time stretch this one faster. Let me, I don't know, duplicate this, have it over here, put another one of these here, crossfade that. And then on this one, what if we chopped out random notes or something? That might not work in our favor as much as we want. If you're ever chopping audio, this is a really important part of sound. You need to make sure there actually is a fade in at the beginning of audio. Otherwise you will get pops and cracks. So something like that. And then what if I duplicate this and I actually reverse the reverse so it's back into normal, and I just like do it like that. And then I take both of these, and let's, if I take both of these and have them playing at the same time, at first it's going to sound like just nonsense, basically. Not the most interesting thing in the world. I'm going to duplicate this one and reverse it and have that crossfade on it too. Not the most interesting thing in the world. But what if I took these and I sent them to a group? So they're going to go to a group, or what is also known as a bus, right? So they're going to be bussed. I'm going to try to do all of my editing. Forgive me if I don't do this, but because normally I do all of my mix editing on the other monitor. But I'm going to try to do it all here. So if I go to the mix console and can I even show routing here? No, I can't. So I'll pull it up here. So all I'm going to do here is take these two sounds that I have, and I'm going to route them both to group 1, which I'm going to call piano pad thing, right? So they're both going to my piano pad thing. Both going here. Now, because they're both going here, I can affect both layers at the same time because they're summing down this group lane. So what I'm going to do is, what if, just hypothetically, what if I put a reverb on here that's like a super crazy, ridiculous reverb that's like a cave or something. So I'm going to open up east-west spaces. Let's see here. And then from here, let's look at something completely wild. Like I need an 8-second length or something like that. That's 6.4 vocal digital cave right there. Carlsbad 9.2. So if I do 9.2, and let's say I have the dry signal and let's say I have the dry signal and the wet signal going at the same time. Already starting to sound sort of patty, right? But what if I take out all of the dry signal and only do wet? Now, before it gets there, before it gets to the reverb, what if I compress it down so that any of these swells aren't really swelling that much? So what if I... So it's almost the same dynamic the whole time, right? And then for all of those little cute little articulations in there, what if I did like a delay of some kind? So what if I did not necessarily a rhythmic delay, but a delay at a certain rate? So this is a stereo delay. So I'm going to take the stereo delay. This is the left, this is the right. Let's have them, they can be pretty split. They can be 50-50 dry and wet. That's fine. But what if the left, what if we don't sync it to tempo? Because we're sound designing. We're not doing a musical rhythm thing, right? And those reverses aren't perfectly in time. What if I just set this one to, I don't know, I'm kind of just guessing here, 250 milliseconds, and I set the right one to 350. What that's going to do is that's going to create phasing issues where they phase in and out of each other, but it's not really phasing issues in terms of it being a bad thing. It creates phasing that's musical to where it sounds like it's never repeating. If you've been in any of my classes ever, I will always tell you your pads, your background textures, everything can never be one-dimensional, can never be stagnant. It needs to always be moving, kinetic, energy, all of the things constantly. And so by having the phasing, having things going in and out of each other, is definitely going to create that effect. And in this situation, we have the left and the right doing different things. And remember, they're going to the reverb. So our order here is compressor to bring that down the dynamics of everything, into stereo, delay, into reverb. Suddenly, I think we're going to have something sounding kind of like a pad. Oh, there's a little glitch right there. If you heard that little pop, that's because that wasn't cross-faded. That was just faded in, which is a problem. Now, what if I want it even more interesting? What I would do is I would probably add another layer to this or modify these in some way. So let's say I take this first, so let's extend it even more. So let's duplicate what we have here and bring it over and crossfade these two things and crossfade that thing, and now we've got an even longer section, right? We're making an actual pad here. So we've got it even longer. What if on, let's say piano reverse pad layer 1, call this one pad layer 2. So what if on pad layer 1, we did some sort of automation to where there's some texture changing throughout. Let's do something like, I don't know, let's just look through. We do modulation, a phaser, a ring modulator, a rotary, a vocal doubler. That's kind of interesting because a vocal doubler is not a typical thing for something like this. So what is it going to do? Right, that's really interesting. So now I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to automate the motion on this vocal doubler. And all I'm going to do, I'm not even really thinking about it because for a pad it can be kind of random. I'm going to hit right and then I'm just going to start moving. Okay, I don't need to actually sit here and write the whole thing. I can also just draw in like random movement if I want. It's gonna do like random things. There's still something popping and cracking somewhere. I don't know exactly where that is. But so we've got that on that movement, and that's creating a really interesting layer. What if on layer 2, just because we can, we adjust it with something else? So what if we adjust it with, I don't necessarily want to do this. What if we did it with pitch, but not like pitch, but what if we did it with the formant of the pitch, which the formant of the pitch is kind of like the tone, the timbre of pitch. It's the thing that determines like how a person sounds when they speak. It's the formant, it's their timbre rather than the actual literal pitch. So if I took this, I can adjust the formant. So again, I'm just going to set it to right. Cool. Remember to always turn right mode off so that you don't do anything silly. And then, so we've got these layers. Let's just draw in some more stuff, whatever. Literally, like, doesn't really matter. We're just creating ambient randomness, if you will. That's the musical sound design that we're doing here with the pad. So We've got that. One of the other things that I would probably do in this situation is actually just like add another layer of something that I can write in that might just already be moving in a pad. So Ethereal Earth is like a free one that it's like a free pad texture kind of thing. And you can technically take this, blend it into this stuff, and make your own custom sound design pads, right? So what were we at? We were at C minor. Let me go in here and get something, I don't know, textures. Don't love that. Let's go to, I don't know, let's take a pad that already exists. Love that. So I'm just gonna hit play. I'm just gonna extend this whole thing all the way over to there. Cool. So that's over there. And now I'm going to send this actually to the same piano group. You don't have to do this kind of stuff. You don't have to send it. You can just stack layers and stuff and not necessarily process it all the same. But by sending it to the same group or bus, I'm processing it all the same. And now I think you'll find we have some really interesting motion with this pad because we've got the motion and pad layers that we've created. And we have Ethereal Earth's layers, which is this waveform and this waveform operating together. Theoretically, if we really want to make it interesting, we can change the blend with automation. I'll show you that. Set it to write mode. So that's going to be reading that information, right? Going to be reading the information. Cool. So with everything here, we've sort of created a really, really interesting sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit P to get my parameters. I'm going to add a whole bunch of bars here because I know there's going to be a huge, huge reverb tail. And then I'm actually going to, this is kind of tricky. I don't think there's a better way to do this, but I'm actually going to render this out as like an actual audio file. So I would say C minor pad design, right? And then I would render it out and I would add it into, or I would create an audio track with it. And so then I would do it with these things soloed and produce it, and you'll see what it does here in a second once it actually renders it out. It is rendering to a WAV file at 4824. I probably could have rendered something smaller, probably could have done an MP3. I'm making you wait, but that's how it goes sometimes. Okay, and now we have this really interesting pad, and we don't need all of these layers here. We already have the interesting pad. Oh, there was some gimmicky weird stuff that happened there because our automation was messed up. Good thing to note, right? Good thing to note when we are processing this and rendering this stuff. So if I were to re-render this, which I won't make you guys sit through that, I would probably make some of these things smoother, some of the automation smoother, and make it happen. But you see how in just a couple minutes we can make a pad happen, right? That's a really cool and interesting sound that we created with just a piano, really, and then this other pad. So there are interesting and maybe even more effective ways to do this. One of my favorite plugins, I'm just going to show you this real quick. I'm going to put these all in a folder. I'm going to call this the pad folder. One of my favorite reverb plugins has sort of a thing built in. It's actually probably the main reason I bought it. That can basically make something a pad by just playing it. So let's see, where is my piano? This is my piano, right? So there's a plugin called Vast from Heaviosity. I'm not necessarily recommending everyone buy it because it is mostly like a reverb and fancy effects plugin, and it's not a bread and butter reverb. For me, it's a fancy and interesting texture reverb for sound design and stuff. It is not your bread and butter convolution algorithmic reverb kind of stuff. I would recommend things like east-west spaces and cinematic rooms and stuff for that. But Vast is interesting, and in one of its creative textures, it actually has something called Pad Maker. And it essentially just has the settings built in here with like a reverb and a delay and everything, to where when you play, it's going to treat it and almost make it sound like a pad. So I'm just going to play a C minor chord here. So that's pretty quiet, right? But I literally just hit one chord. But again, let me turn it off real quick. Actually just pretty quiet because my contact is pretty quiet. Why is contact so quiet? I'll turn it up here for a second. Watch your ears. Yeah. And then if I turn Vast on, it made it a pad. This is really cool, and it's probably one of the reasons I'm going to keep playing and change things up. But this is one of the reasons that I specifically bought this plugin. That being said, I will say I have found on a practical basis, it's not the most practical, because if I don't render things to audio afterwards, the playable nature of it gets really annoying. Especially, you'll see, if I were to stop playing here, if I release the sustain pedal and release my hands, it's still going for a long time. That gets really annoying when I'm doing things like composing and I'm starting and stopping the same section over and over again because the tail keeps going. So it really is like a quick and not messy, but kind of messy way to do it. But you need to you basically need to render it to audio to be truly effective, especially once you're in the mix stage. If you start mixing and you've got that thing happening and the tail just goes for 18 years, it's going to mess up your whole mix in your ears and everything. But yeah, so Vast on there is one cool and interesting way to do that. Cool. So let's go back to our friend over here, the reverses. So I've mentioned several times now risers. So a riser, you've heard risers in trailers, film score, stuff like that. It's the thing that is not just, but the thing that is, right? So there's an actual pitch to it. So there's a few different ways to do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to start with a piano. Let me start with, I'm not going to start with drums either. Let me get like a synthesizer. And I could start with something, let's see if I can get like a really basic synth to show you what's actually happening, and then show you how we can really sound design with a way more interesting synth. So if I go to, is it analog machine? Not analog, retro machines, that's what it's called. If I go to retro machines and I just load up some simple synth bass, there's like a standard one that I use all the time. In your face bass. Yeah. So I won't go into all the details of how synth works, but we do have our cutoff, which is important. Cutoff just is our high filter basically, and you can add resonance and all the different things. But so let's say hypothetically, on a bare basics level, I just wanted another C to go with this, but I wanted the pitch to bend too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit record and I'm going to record a C. I'll even do it in octaves. Oh, actually it's not going to let me do it in octaves because this is a mono synth, I think. And I turn it into not mono. Oh wait. No, never mind, it's not mono. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we've got a basic synth here, super simple. There's a couple different ways to do this to where you can have rising pitch happen, right? So one of the easiest ways is in the DAW itself. Pitch bend is an inherent value assigned to CC. But the problem is pitch bend, just like your pitch bend on your keyboard, right? The pitch bend thing typically only goes up two whole tones, I think. And so we can do it, and I can show you. In fact, we can even record it while it's doing it. I'll just record it. I'll hit play and then I'll record it and you'll see. Right. So that's probably not the way that I would do it typically. Notice that it stopped right here. That's because you can go down too. So if I did it, I might do an exponential thing, or in Cubase, you can take the little line tool and do parabola, is it? Yeah, it is parabola. And do like a real smooth. Right, so that's one way to do it. Let's just go ahead and keep that for now. But remember, this is still MIDI. I can't control everything I really want to control while it's MIDI. So what I'm going to do, now that I've done the pitch bend on the MIDI side of things, I'm going to render it to audio, because we're doing sound design. So we've got this audio now. This audio is basic synth pitch bend, right? So we've got this here. But what if I only want this to be 1 bar, but I want it to, increase at the same rate while I'm dealing with audio? Let me just chop this here, time stretch it to one thing of audio, or to 1 bar. Now, what if I go ahead and do this and make it follow that, right? Getting closer, right? I don't think I like that as aggressive there. So we've got that. What if I wanted my piano reverse to also increase in pitch? Well, there's a slight issue here, right? Because we didn't pitch bend it while it was MIDI. We need to pitch bend it while it's audio. Excuse me. So if we're going to pitch bend while it's audio, there's a few different ways to do this. Let's experiment as a team here. I don't know if you can use these parameters of fine tune and transposition in an automated manner for audio files or not. Let's figure it out together, and then I'll show you how I'd normally do this. So I don't think that recorded. No. So you can't use those parameters. I'm sure somewhere else there is a parameter in Cubase or whatever to pitch bend. I'm going to use a free plugin. Got to remind myself to do it down here for you guys. I'm going to use a free plugin. Free. Did I mention it was free? This one is called Inner Pitch. This is the free version of it. This allows you to pitch bend anything. So if I put it at 0, I can slowly pitch bend this up by writing. Put it in write mode, and we're going to create a sound here. And in this case, I was able to control way more than just like a whole tone or 2 whole tones or whatever that the CC MIDI version allows you to do. I was able to go all the way up to 2 octaves. So if we just solo this, set it back to read. Right, isn't that cool? So we can go pretty extreme with it, right? Let's listen to this again. Right. Now we've got the basics of a riser, right? But all of our elements here are pretty simple elements. I don't super love them, but they are rising. So in this situation, I've got this piano thing. What if I want a little bit more motion and rhythm in my riser? Well, one of the things I could do, there's a few different ways to do this. I'm going to show you a few different solutions. So I could take Chopper, I think it's Chopper, and change the speed not to quarter notes, but change it to chop at a certain rate. I'll show you, I'll play it and then show you. So now I could, what it's doing is effectively it's chopping the sound with this kind of shape to it. So right, but I'm going to set it not to a rhythmic thing, but to like a milliseconds thing. And then I'm going to automate it to speed up. So it's going to basically speed up as this progresses. So let's set the right mode on. And I actually needed this not at 0 at the beginning. I need it to be like somewhere like there because it wasn't coming through at all before. So. So that's one really interesting and kind of cool way to do it. Another way to do it is there's another free plugin. Free plugin alert, Transcape. Giving away all my secrets in this one. Love kilohertz Transcape. So for this one, this is already chopping. So theoretically, I could have this chop at different rates. Let's see if it allows this parameter to be controlled with a rate as I change it. I think it probably will. So Transcape basically chops at different rhythmic patterns, so I can even draw some weird rhythmic pattern like this. Right, so I can do something like that, and then let's have the Transcape, let's see if I can write it for specific rhythms as I move through. Right, and so now it's doing this really interesting thing. Yeah, that's actually super cool. And so together we have this. And this is, again, this is a pretty basic sound. This is, to me, I intentionally used a basic synth. We're just using a piano and a really simple cymbal roll, or cymbal hit. That's it, not even a cymbal roll. So let's add some more layers and let's make it way more interesting. So what if I go to Massive X? I'm winging this. So what if I go to Massive X and Massive X is just a synthesizer, and I find some kind of synth that's, I don't know, something really gnarly. Let's see. That's already pretty gnarly. All right, let's just start with that. But I don't love that, so I'm also going to distort that. So I'm going to run it through a distortion plugin. Now we're cooking with gas. I'm gonna play this note at measure 3. And it's obviously like way too loud right now. But I'm not even going to bother doing the pitch bend. I'm just going to now render this in place, render settings. And this is important. This time I'm going to make sure that it's dry. So when it's dry, it's going to transfer the channel settings. So it's going to keep my distortion. So I'm not baking in the distortion. I can still control the distortion parameters later. So I'm going to make it dry. And so we have this hit now. Now I see the same thing that you guys see, which is this thing hits and then it tails off. So what am I going to do? Reverse, right? So I'm going to take this and reverse it, and let's listen to what this sounds like reversed now. Right, now what I'll probably do is do another little pitch shift. I'll do a more subtle one, set it to right, and then... Right, and now we've got this cool little interesting pitch thing, and then let's do that chopper on this one. So I'm just going to set it to whatever, that seems interesting, and then I'm going to, that's only on one side for some reason. Oh, because that's how that's just, wait, am I tripping? That should not only be on one side. Why did that turn mono? I don't know what just happened with that. Okay, skipping that for now, because I don't know what actually just happened. What's the other one? Tremolo? Tremolo, I believe, is a very similar thing. If you ask me exactly what this one does, I couldn't tell you. But you're starting to get the picture already. So I'm going to set it in right. I'm going to increase the rate as things go on. Right, so now, all of my secrets and everything given away, but now, if we solo this, cool. Now let's combine it with everything else. Cool, now we've got some kind of interesting sound. What if we take these sounds, and again, this is basic sound design, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but what if I put them all into another group, and I call this the riser group? So I'm going to send all of these have to show this on here. I'll send all of these to the riser group. And then with the riser group, let's make them a cohesive sound by running them through some kind of distortion. I really like Fury, so I just use Fury all the time. It's my personal favorite plugin. And let's take it a step further. Fury also has rhythmic stuff built into it. So let's go to like Undulator, but let's not use the standard one because everyone uses that, or because I've used it too much probably. And let's randomize the sequence of which it is adjusting. So first I'll let you listen to it. Right, but let's randomize this. Right, so now we have a very, very, very interesting. And if we were to render that out, which we totally could, let's just take this whole section and all of this and render this out as a audio mix down, render this out as a C minor riser. Make sure we are adding the track to our pool, or adding it into the, creating an audio track basically. And so it's going to go ahead and do that. Cool. And then we have our really interesting choppy little riser thing going on here. So that's like one step to making a riser. It doesn't have to be choppy, but generally it has a swoosh element, a crescendo element to it, and it has a pitch swell up. Cool.